But the truth is, failure doesn't carry nearly as much risk as inaction does. At least with failure, you know where you stand. You can learn from your mistakes, adjust your approach, and continue moving forward. With inaction, you're stuck in a state of perpetual uncertainty, haunted by the what-ifs. The cost of inaction is living in a perpetual state of regret and longing, always wondering how different things could have been if you just made the decision to act. It's waking up one day, many years from now, with the realization that your dreams have withered away, simply because you were too afraid of failure to take the first step. The real cost of inaction is not just the missed opportunity, it's the toll it takes on your confidence, your growth, and ultimately your life. Every time you choose not to act, whether it's postponing a decision, avoiding a difficult conversation, or neglecting a goal, you're building a future that's less certain and more regretful. You avoid the discomfort of failure, but you also miss out on the rewards of progress. What is the real cost of doing nothing? It's the missed opportunities, the relationships that never blossom, the skills that remain undeveloped, and the dreams that slowly fade into the background. The time you could have used to take a step forward is gone, and you're left with nothing to show for it, but the fear that kept you paralyzed. The longer you wait, the more entrenched the fear becomes. Inaction solidifies into a habit, and that habit becomes your life. Before you know it, you find yourself looking back, realizing that years have passed, and you've done little to move closer to what you want or become who you were meant to be. Inaction is a subtle thief. It steals your potential and your time quietly and without fanfare. When you choose to do nothing, you're not just avoiding the possibility of failure, you're also avoiding the very possibility of success. People often fear failure more than they fear stagnation, but the cost of inaction is often far greater. Failure, though painful, is an experience that can teach, refine, and propel you forward. It's the moment when you realize you need to change, adapt, or try again. It offers lessons and growth that, with enough persistence, can ultimately lead to success. Inaction, on the other hand, robs you of those lessons entirely. It keeps you in a state of limbo, perpetually wondering what if without ever finding the courage to discover the answer. Opportunity doesn't knock endlessly. It's often subtle, brief, and easy to miss if you're not ready. The people who live meaningful, impactful lives aren't always the most talented or the most prepared. They're the ones who start. They take imperfect action. They know that momentum matters more than perfection. They understand that fear doesn't go away with time. It only grows stronger when fed by delay. If you always wait until you feel completely ready, you may spend your entire life waiting. Every time you tell yourself, "I'll do it later," you're gambling with time you may not get back. You're betting against your own future. And at some point, later becomes too late, not because the dream is impossible, but because the person you could have been was never given the chance to grow into it. What you delay today, you may mourn tomorrow. Dreams are fragile in that way, not because they lack power, but because they require action to stay alive. The word later feels safe because it delays discomfort. It spares us from the vulnerability of starting, from the discipline of committing, from the possibility of failure. But it also steals our momentum. It trains our brain to delay action, to settle into the false comfort of intention without follow-through. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and eventually the dreams we once felt so passionate about become distant memories we barely recognize. Most people don't give up on their dreams with a dramatic declaration. They simply push them back one day at a time until one day becomes never. Later is the most seductive lie we tell ourselves. It sounds responsible, patient, even strategic, but more often than not, it's a disguise for fear, procrastination, and avoidance. We convince ourselves that tomorrow will be better, that we'll have more energy, more time, more courage to finally start. We tell ourselves we're just waiting for the right moment, the perfect conditions, the inspiration to strike. But the truth is, perfect conditions rarely exist. Time doesn't slow down to give you a clear runway. And that elusive later is a graveyard full of ideas that were never acted on, goals that were postponed into oblivion, and talents that never saw the light of day. You drift when you let the days lead you instead of leading your days. You drift when you avoid choosing because choosing might mean discomfort or failure or facing something you've tried to ignore. But here's the truth, not choosing won't protect you. It just delays the pain and multiplies the cost. The life you want won't be built by chance. It will only be shaped by choice-conscious, committed, consistent choice. You don't need to have everything figured out, but you do need to choose something, anything, to move forward. Because if you don't decide where you're going, the world will always find somewhere else to take you. Deciding means taking ownership. It means drawing a line between what you will do and what you won't, between who you want to become and who you refuse to remain. It's not always a grand or dramatic moment. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, I'm not wasting today, or I'm going to finish what I started. But every real decision requires clarity, and clarity requires honesty. You have to look at your habits, your environment, your priorities, and admit where you're choosing ease over effort. Because not deciding is still a decision, it's just one that gives away your power. Drifting is one of the quietest ways to lose control of your life. It doesn't come with alarms or clear warnings. It happens slowly, subtly, and often without resistance. One day blends into the next, and before you know it, weeks have passed, even years, without any meaningful progress toward the things that truly matter to you. When you don't make decisions real, intentional ones, you surrender your direction to chance. You let the world decide what's urgent, what's important, what's worth your time. You become reactive instead of proactive, constantly responding to other people's expectations, emergencies, or distractions. And the danger of drifting is that it doesn't feel painful at first. In fact, it can feel comfortable. There's no pressure, no risk, no effort. But over time, that comfort calcifies into regret as you look back and realize you were living on autopilot instead of steering your life toward purpose. Your future self deserves better than a life half-lived. They deserve the results of your effort, the reward of your discipline, and the peace that comes from knowing you made the most of your time. They don't need you to be perfect. They just need you to care enough to stop letting your life be stolen by distraction. You don't need a massive overhaul. You just need to notice, to pause before you drift, to remember that this moment, this exact moment, is shaping the person you're becoming. The question is, are you scrolling past your own life, or are you choosing to fully live it? Because your future self is already hoping you'll make the right choice. The person you're becoming is shaped by the things you're doing when no one's watching. And that future version of you, the one with more years behind than ahead, won't care about how many likes you got or how deep you went into a digital rabbit hole. They'll care about whether you built something meaningful, whether you showed up for the people you loved, whether you tried even when it was hard, whether you said yes to the things that mattered and no to the distractions that didn't. The tragedy isn't that people fail, it's that they never really begin. They delay. They wait for permission, for motivation, for the perfect time. And while they wait, time moves forward silently and swiftly. Their dreams stay shelved, their goals remain ideas, and the version of themselves they could have become fades into regret. Imagine for a moment that your future self is sitting silently, observing the choices you're making right now, not judging you, not blaming you, but hoping that you'll take life seriously enough to stop wasting the moments that matter. Hoping that you'll choose action over apathy, courage over comfort, and presence over distraction. Every decision you make today writes the story your future self will have to live with. Yet so many people move through life as if the days are disposable, treating time like it's endless and their potential like it's optional. They scroll past opportunities. They swipe past meaning. They binge moments that could be milestones. It's easy to do because it's normal now. You're constantly encouraged to consume, to escape, to numb out instead of tune in. But just because it's common doesn't mean it's harmless. Being ruthless with your focus means defending it like your future depends on it, because it does. It means turning off notifications, setting boundaries, and not apologizing for saying no. It means choosing depth over speed and clarity over chaos. Focused people don't live reactive lives. They move with purpose. They don't wait for motivation to strike, they build discipline to follow through. They don't try to do everything, they commit to doing the right things well. In the end, what separates those who live fulfilled, impactful lives from those who merely exist is not luck, talent, or even intelligence. It's the ability to direct their energy every day toward what truly matters, and to do so without hesitation or distraction. Being aware isn't just about noticing what's happening around you, it's about understanding how your environment, habits, and emotions influence your behavior. It's catching yourself when you're about to drift into autopilot. It's recognizing when you're doing something because it's easy, not because it's right. It's paying attention to the cost of your attention. Because every time you give your focus to something unimportant, you are taking it away from something that could be life-changing. Focus is a finite resource. You don't get more of it by multitasking or staying busy. You get more from it by protecting it ruthlessly. In a world that is constantly pulling your attention in every direction, being deliberate with your focus is no longer a luxury, it's a survival skill. Distractions are everywhere, disguised as opportunities, entertainment, or even responsibilities. Without awareness, your time and energy get scattered, and what could have been a day of progress turns into a blur of reactions and unfinished thoughts. To truly own your life, you have to become fiercely intentional about where your mind goes. That means knowing what matters to you deeply enough to say no to what doesn't. It means resisting the temptation to be everywhere and everything for everyone, and instead choosing to be fully present and committed in the areas that align with your highest goals. Even when time feels slow and progress feels invisible, wise use of time always pays off. It may not bring instant gratification, but it brings something deeper, a sense of alignment, of purpose, of movement in the right direction. You begin to live with less regret, less chaos, and more clarity. When you treat each moment as meaningful, you begin to live more intentionally, and that intentional life builds a better future by design, not by accident. Time will pass no matter what you do with it. The only question is whether it will work for you or slip through your hands. People often think change comes from massive leaps or dramatic transformations, but the truth is that lasting progress is made in the quiet, unnoticed moments when no one is watching. It happens when you choose discipline over distraction, growth over comfort, and purpose over impulse. These moments may not feel significant while you're in them, but they are seeds planted in the soil of your future. Over weeks, months, and years, those seeds grow into results, achievements, and character. Your future is not a mystery waiting to be discovered, it is a product waiting to be built. And what you invest today will show up tomorrow, whether it's in your health, your mindset, your relationships, or your work. The future isn't something that arrives suddenly, it's built quietly, moment by moment, through the choices we make every single day. It doesn't matter how big or small those choices seem at the time. Every moment spent wisely, no matter how ordinary it appears, becomes a building block in the foundation of the life you are creating. When you decide to focus instead of procrastinate, to read instead of scroll, to move instead of sit still, you are casting votes for the future you want to live in. You are shaping a version of yourself who is more capable, more resilient, and more fulfilled. The compound effect of these small decisions is powerful. Time, when used with intention, becomes the most valuable ally you have. The world is full of people who know what they want but are waiting for the right time to act or the perfect conditions to begin. But conditions are rarely perfect, and time is never promised. What separates the fulfilled from the frustrated is not knowledge, it's the courage and discipline to act intentionally, consistently, and with purpose, even when it's easier to keep watching from the sidelines. Intentional action is about doing what matters even when it's difficult or inconvenient. It requires focus, effort, and often discomfort, but unlike passive consumption, it produces momentum. One deliberate action, even a small one, can set off a chain reaction of growth. Writing 1 paragraph a day is better than reading 10 books about writing. Practicing for 15 minutes beats watching hours of tutorial videos. Taking one uncomfortable conversation forward makes more impact than endlessly researching communication strategies. Intentional action turns ideas into reality. It is the difference between daydreaming and designing your life. It's easy to believe you're progressing simply because you're learning or thinking about progress. But only action creates change. Only action builds habits, develops skills, solves problems, and moves you from where you are to where you want to be. In a world overwhelmed by information, entertainment, and digital noise, it's easier than ever to be a passive consumer. We scroll through feeds, binge watch shows, and absorb content for hours without ever lifting a finger to create, contribute, or progress. It gives the illusion of activity. We feel engaged, stimulated, even inspired, but very little actually changes in our lives. That's because consumption, no matter how educational or entertaining, doesn't equal movement. It doesn't build, it doesn't compound, and it doesn't leave behind anything lasting unless it's followed by intentional action. The truth is, you can know everything there is to know about success, productivity, fitness, art, or happiness, but unless you take real steps, nothing in your world will reflect that knowledge. The gap between what people know and what they do is often filled with good intentions and wasted hours. The irony is that avoiding short-term discomfort, whether it's fear, effort, or discipline, is often what leads to long-term pain. The conversation you don't have, the idea you don't act on, the time you spend numbing yourself instead of challenging yourself, all of it adds up. And then one day you look around and see that the life you imagined is still just a thought, not a reality. Regret doesn't grow from single moments of rest or fun, it grows from patterns. It grows from choosing comfort over purpose too many times, from drifting when you should have decided, from watching instead of participating. The seeds of regret are planted every time we let time slip by without asking ourselves what we truly want from it. And the longer we let them grow, the harder they are to ignore. The most dangerous part of wasting time is that you don't feel the loss until it's too late. There's no alarm that sounds when you scroll for hours or put off something important for the 10th time. The consequences are invisible at first, but over time they show up in the form of missed growth, unfulfilled potential, and the sinking feeling that life is passing by while you're still waiting for the perfect moment. Regret creeps in when you look back and realize how different things could have been if only you had started sooner, tried harder, or cared more. It doesn't just haunt your past, it poisons your future by making you feel stuck and powerless. Regret is one of the most powerful and painful emotions a person can carry, and it rarely arrives suddenly. It builds quietly, often unnoticed, over months or years of choices made half-heartedly or opportunities left untouched. What most people regret at the end of their lives isn't what they did wrong, it's what they never did at all. It's the time they let slip through their fingers, the chances they were too afraid to take, the relationships they didn't nurture, and the dreams they put off for someday that never came. Wasted time in the moment often feels harmless. You think you'll make up for it later. You think there will be more time, more chances, more energy. But time is cruel in its silence. It keeps moving regardless of how we spend it, and it doesn't pause to let us catch up. Focus isn't just about productivity, it's about ownership. When you control your attention, you control your energy. And when you control your energy, you reclaim your life from the things that only exist to use it up. Distractions are everywhere, and they will never go away. But the choice to ignore them, to protect your focus, and to act with intention, that is where purpose begins. This isn't just about losing a few minutes here and there. It's about losing control over your mental space. When distractions become a habit, they rewire your brain for constant stimulation and shallow thinking. The ability to focus, to go deep on a single task, to reflect on your life, or to simply be present, these are all weakened over time. And what makes it worse is that we often justify our distractions. We call it taking a break or unwinding, but in truth, most distractions don't rest the mind, they fragment it. This isn't just about losing a few minutes here and there. It's about losing control over your mental space. When distractions become a habit, they rewire your brain for constant stimulation and shallow thinking. The ability to focus, to go deep on a single task, to reflect on your life, or to simply be present, these are all weakened over time. And what makes it worse is that we often justify our distractions. We call it taking a break or unwinding, but in truth, most distractions don't rest the mind, they fragment it. In today's world, distractions aren't just occasional interruptions, they are deliberately engineered forces fighting for your attention. Every app, notification, advertisement, and endless stream of content is crafted with one purpose: to pull you away from what matters most. The most successful platforms and technologies are not those that serve your goals, but those that can keep your eyes glued to a screen the longest. They are built on algorithms that learn your behavior, your weaknesses, your triggers, and then use that knowledge to hijack your attention. It's no longer a passive accident when you get sidetracked, it's by design. Many people don't fully realize the value of time until they're looking back on how they used it. It's only when we feel it slipping away during moments of crisis, reflection, or loss that we understand how precious it truly was. Time doesn't make noise when it passes, it slips away quietly, second by second, choice by choice. That's why it's so easy to waste. Hours can vanish into meaningless scrolling or mindless habits. And the tragedy is that we often don't even notice until it's too late. The danger isn't just in wasting time, it's in not realizing we're doing it. Many people don't fully realize the value of time until they're looking back on how they used it. It's only when we feel it slipping away during moments of crisis, reflection, or loss that we understand how precious it truly was. Time doesn't make noise when it passes, it slips away quietly, second by second, choice by choice. That's why it's so easy to waste. Hours can vanish into meaningless scrolling or mindless habits. And the tragedy is that we often don't even notice until it's too late. The danger isn't just in wasting time, it's in not realizing we're doing it. As she sat watching the world go by, something caught her eye. It wasn't so much its color or shape, but the way it was moving. She squinted to see if she could better understand what it was and where it was going, but it didn't help. As she continued to stare into the distance, she didn't understand why this uneasiness was building inside her body.